It's a waiver wire Tuesday, and today we're talking about wide receivers. We're going 20 plus deep, helping you out in deep leagues, helping you out for next week, helping you out in the basic leagues, because we're also going to skim the top as well. But before you dig in, you need to click that subscribe button right now. We're talking about the waiver wire every single day. We're doing deep dives on the trending players so you can get the advanced analytics. You get a rundown on the situation so you can make your decision on what to do on that player. We're using these videos to help you set your lineups. There's multiple videos coming out today. And on top of that, Ric Flair's watching. You like Ric Flair. Don't disappoint him. Click that button. Stop missing out. We're going to start things off with Cedric Tillman. It's easy to say. He went off last week, and the numbers are great. A 93% route participation rate. We're getting the air yards, 17.7 ADOT. Average depth of target, that's solid. And we're running a lot of routes on top of getting a 22% target share. We're getting the deep balls. We got Jameis Winston back there slinging the rock, throwing yellow balls. And we know one thing to be true about Jameis Winston is he's going to throw the rock downfield. He's got a lot of cojones. He does not care who's down there. He will sling it. Cedric Tillman is running a lot of routes. We saw that last week, and we saw that this week, and that should be continuously going forward. On top of that, Jeudy ran on 100% of the routes. We saw almost a 20% target share. We got a good ADOT of 12.3. The ADOTs are ramping up a little bit, too, with Jameis Winston. It's a small sample. Something to note here. But these wide receivers for the Browns, they're going to be a little something different compared to what we're used to from the start of the season, because we're seeing more upside here. Even Elijah Moore can get it. Almost a 30% target share in this matchup. He saw 12 targets. Ran on 76% of the routes. Ran a lot in the slot. He's getting the short game here. 7.9 ADOT, but that ADOT's a little bit higher, but the volume's there. So what does that tell us? If Jeudy and Cedric Tillman's locked up downfield, he's going to Elijah Moore. Safeties over top, we're looking at Elijah Moore. So this offense could be nasty going forward, at least fun to watch with Jameis Winston and company. Keon Coleman hit again for fantasy football. 21.9% target share, a good route participation rate, 11.6 average depth of target, 81 air yards in this game. Those are good numbers. Amari Cooper's going to ramp up. That should siphon some of that. But Keon Coleman should be ramping up too. He's a rookie. He's got some talent. He's a contested catch play downfield. So what does that tell you? He's going to get money targets. Those money targets, they're high acuity. They could go wrong. They could go right. But when they go right, they're going to get you some money for fantasy production. I expect that to be spiky, but I expect that to be good for fantasy football and something that you may want going forward. Parker Washington enters the chat. We have injuries with the Jacksonville Jaguars with Kirk and Brian Thomas Jr. He's going to be getting some run. He had a small sample last year where he was productive. He's good out of the slot. You can also play him on the outside. He's a good route runner. Very strong hands at the catch point. Ran on almost 75% of the routes last week due to the injuries. And he's a guy that's going to get work. And he's a guy that you may want to look at and take a stab at just in case the volume rolls his way. Should be rolling his way. That's what these numbers are indicating. Tim Jones ran on 51% of the routes, ran 18 routes and got 2 targets. Another guy for deeper leagues to pay attention to. Ricky Pearsall. Second game out there, 4 targets, 16% target share. This is against the Dallas Cowboys. Weird game scripts, but we got a lot of run in this game. 8 out of 7.8. Ran out of the slot on 33.3% of our snaps. That being said, we're getting work. We're getting opportunity. We're going to have a bye week, and then we're going to have Tampa Bay on the road. So there's more time for him to ramp up. But on top of that, Jennings might be back. Something to pay attention to. And he's a guy to pick up off waivers. He should be picked up off waivers. A lot of people are going to drop him because he didn't play last week, and now he's on bye. So they're just going to drop him to make space. That being said, Jennings is another guy to look at because one thing has proven to be true, that he can be productive in this offense when there's an injury. That being said, Jennings has potential. Jacob Cowling's a wide receiver to pay attention to. We did not get a target last week, but the week prior we got 50 yards on 2 catches. A good rookie wide receiver who broke out with 2 different collegiate programs. Pay attention to Jacob Cowling off the waiver wire. Jalen McMillan ran on 90% of the routes last week, ran 46 routes. He was getting a lot of work. I saw him a lot on the red zone. That makes sense. We also saw 7 targets against the Atlanta Falcons. Just did not run right. 4 catches for 35 yards. But the workload's there. 7 targets in a very voluminous matchup. We saw the air yards at 13.6 ADOT there. 95 air yards in this game. The target share could increase a little bit, but we're getting a lot of targets going to the running backs here and to the tight end. But the fact is, he's outworking the other wide receivers here. So he's the guy to get per these numbers right now. We're getting work in the slot. We're getting work on the outside. We're getting some volume here. Trey Palmer's a different play, though. He's deep threat city. He's got 4.3 speed. We're in there on a lot of routes still. 76.5% of the routes. We got 2 targets in this matchup. But very similar to Keon Coleman, but different play style. We are going to get those money targets downfield. We bring 1 or 2 of those in. It could be splash production for you. They could be dangerous too because you could get overshot. Could be contested too much. But that being said, Trey Palmer's a wide receiver to look at. We talked about him a good bit last week. Sterling Shepard has the queue right now. However, 5 targets in this matchup. 10% target share. Ran on 72% of the routes. Ran in the slot a lot. He's another guy in this offense to pay attention to. The volume could run right for him in some games. But note, we got the Chiefs. We got the Niners. Pick your bucks carefully for those matchups. Kayshon Boutte ran on 86% of the routes. He's getting volume. He's getting targets. A 20.7% target share. And the ADOT's good. So over 20% target share. Barely, but over there. We're running on almost 90% of the routes. And we're over 15 on the average depth of target. Over 12 for sure. Almost 100 air yards. That's elite work rate. We're starting to get there. Drake May is going to eventually be back. Kayshon Boutte is trending. So if you're in a deeper league, you may want to pick him up. Traditional 12-team league. Hard thing to do. We don't want to stash wide receivers, but he needs to be on your list. DeMario Douglas, we're getting a lot of the short game here, the short targets. The offense is changing, but he could be Drake May's Josh Downs for the future. Drake May's currently dealing with an injury. Could be back sooner than later, though, but something to pay attention to because he has been getting volume in the offense. Christian Watson, deep threat city. On top of that, there's going to be games where we're going to get a good target share. He's up and down, but this is the carousel fact of the Green Bay Packers. We got a good passing offense here. Romeo Doubs runs a lot of routes. Jalen Reed's the guy you really want out of this. But Christian Watson's got a lot of upside on any given Sunday. He stretches the field. He gets those deep targets. And if we get enough of that, you could get that splash production out of him. On top of that, Dontayvion, Wicks, short target share. Not much volume in this matchup. Catching 2 balls here. But again, carousel effect with the Packers. If you're stuck at wide receiver and you don't know what to do, if the matchup's good for the Packers and it looks like it's going to be a high-volume game, just roll with a Packers wide receiver. Obviously, the more work, the better. So if they're running a lot of routes, getting a lot of targets, he's in on 30% of the routes. He's only running 9 routes in this matchup. It's going to be off and on with that. But again, he's a splash play guy, so you're not expecting him to be consistent. You're just hoping for a splash. Rashod Bateman is a big splash play guy. Will Fuller effect here. And from what we're seeing is what you want from the numbers outside the fantasy production from last week. Ran on almost 100% of the routes. And we got the 8 out of 14.8. 7 air yards in this matchup off 5 targets. So 5 plus targets in this game. Almost a 15% target share at 14.3. We're getting the work rate that we see from a Will Fuller effect. That it's going to be up and down. But the ups are going to be very spiky and the downs are going to be very down. When we got the down game, we may have another one next week against the Broncos. Because it is the Broncos. But again, you're not going to be able to predict it too much with a guy like Rashod Bateman, but he is rosterable in 12-team leagues, definitely deeper leagues, due to this, but you just have to understand what you're working with. You may not want this. Some of you do because you can throw him in your lineup, you can close your eyes and just pray to the fantasy gods that he hits for you because he's been hitting this year, but it is going to be very spiky. Troy Franklin, we're watching him. He's a rookie wide receiver. He's getting run on the field. It curtailed a little bit against Carolina. We're watching him going forward in some of these matchups because he's a high-end prospect. He's very good on the football field. Bo Nix loves to target him. 2 targets in this matchup. Week prior, led the team with 6 targets. Week prior to that, 3 targets in that game. He's starting to get a little bit more volume compared to the start of the season. Jalen Tolbert, look at the work rate here. 92.7% of the routes ran. He was in on them. 38 routes. 12.3 average depth of target, but we're not getting a volume of targets here. However, the week prior, we got 5, or the game prior, because it was week 6. Before that, it was week 10. 2, it's the Dallas Cowboys. So I do not expect anything out of the Dallas Cowboys other than weirdness. But he's in on a lot of the snaps. He's in on a lot of the routes. And that's opportunity. You cannot get a target unless you're running a route. You can't catch a pass unless you're getting a target. Jalen Tolbert's getting work in those regards, so you're just playing the matchups and praying to the fantasy gods. Xavier Legette might be the #1 wide receiver in this offense because Diontae Johnson might be traded here soon. When that happens, his value is going to go through the roof, and everybody's going to want him off the waiver wire, so you may want to just get him now before that happens, and then his trade value will at least go up where you can kick the tires more with your league mates. We saw a 20% target share last week, ran on 63% of the routes. So his routes per target ratio is very good. We got good air yards. We run a 4.3. We're scoring touchdowns at a good clip. We got 3 this season. We scored 1 last week. We're getting a lot of opportunity around the goal line. But Jalen Coker's another wide receiver to get because he's cheaper off the market. We got some upside here. We ran 33 routes at an 80.5% route participation rate. We're running out of slot too. Very talented rookie wide receiver that we've been paying attention to throughout the offseason. We got a good target share in this matchup. Guy to pay attention to if Diontae Johnson goes out. A guy to pick up to see what happens. Watch Diontae Johnson, see if he gets traded on the market. But Jalen Coker has some upside for the foreseeable future. 103 air yards in this matchup, a good ADOT. A player to watch big time, and Jakobi Meyers is back. 7 targets last week, 25.9% target share. Our ADOT was just 4, but historically we're always rocking a good ADOT, so that could be the matchup on offense here. Route participation rate was almost 95%. Historically with the Raiders, last year, a little bit of this year, he's been rocking good work rates on the consistent. So this is a wide receiver to pick up and just hope for the best. Trey Tucker's getting volume here. Almost a 95% route participation rate. Just 3 targets. But really, just look at the targets since week 3. 9, 6, 5, 2, 8, 3. I said he was going to get work. He's getting work. He's getting work. And now you just pray to the fantasy gods that work turns into points. That's all we can do from here. He's getting work. He's getting on the field. He's super cheap. You just got to pray to the fantasy gods that work turns into fantasy points. It hasn't for the last 4 weeks, but we're getting opportunities. It's just the Raiders. And on top of that, Trey Tucker's not Malik Neighbors, but he is getting work. He is getting opportunities. Jake Bobo ran on 81.3% of the routes. However, things are trending well for DK Metcalf. We're watching that situation. If you're really hurting, okay. He did well in training camp. He looked good in training camp. There was a lot of news about him in training camp. He's a training camp dandy. He earned a lot of routes this week. Not a lot of targets. But if DK's out, look at him because he's the third wheel there. Darius Slayton gets air yards. He gets pushed downfield. This was a matchup where they had to push the pace because Pittsburgh had it pushed on them. 122 air yards in this matchup. He's off and on. I look for him to be an air yards dandy, a guy that can be splashy, a guy that's unpredictable but can score big in the box score on those games that he hits. Noah Brown had that big catch at the end of the game. We got some fantasy production out of him. 17.6% target share though. Ran on 80% of the routes. Ran a little bit out of the slot. 124 air yards, but we know where those air yards came from is off that one big play. We're getting volume here. We're running more routes. Something to notice here. Josh Downs popped one on us for that long touchdown. That was a big deal for us for fantasy football. We got 4 catches for 109 yards. We saw 9 targets in this game. Anthony Richardson, you can slice it either way. The guys ain't catching balls. Things ain't looking good on their end. Things ain't looking good on his end. Either way, it hasn't been looking good. Josh Downs, though, is still a very good wide receiver, and you can play the matchups with him. You can pray to the fantasy gods with him, but he still is very good. He's getting a good work rate. We're running a lot out of the slot, so that could be money in some matchups. On top of that, we're running a lot of routes, and we're getting targets. So those targets ain't always accurate. They're not always catchable, but guess what? It's work, and that work could lead to fantasy. Those are the wide receivers going into week 9. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Make sure to hit the subscribe button on the way out. One thing for watching. Catch you on the next video.